So, you think being born different makes you special? Well, let me tell you something about being a mutant. It's like winning the worst lottery in human history. You get powers, sure, but you also get a lifetime subscription to being society's favorite punching bag. And trust me, I've had about 200 years to think about this. You see all those superhero movies where the guy gets bit by a spider or struck by lightning and suddenly life gets better? Yeah, forget all that garbage. Those are fairy tales for people who don't know what real power costs. Me? I'm Logan. Some call me Wolverine. I've got metal claws that pop out of my knuckles, a healing factor that won't let me die no matter how much I want to, and enough trauma to fill a psychology textbook. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched friends turn into enemies, and buried more people than any man should. So when I tell you that being born a mutant is a curse wrapped in what looks like a gift, you better listen, because I'm about to walk you through exactly what your life looks like when you're born with that little genetic surprise called the X gene. And spoiler alert, it's not going to be the power fantasy you're imagining. You ready for this? Good. Because we're starting at the very beginning, back when you still had hope. Look, I'm supposed to ask you to like and subscribe here, but let's be honest, only do it if you're genuinely enjoying these stories. Don't just mindlessly hit buttons because some guy with claws told you to. But I am curious, where exactly are you listening from, and what ungodly hour is it? Anyway, enough stalling, time for your favorite fairy tale. You open your eyes for the very first time, and congratulations. You look just like every other screaming wrinkled potato that's ever been born. Your parents think they've hit the jackpot. Normal kid, 10 fingers, 10 toes, the right number of eyes. They have no idea they're looking at a walking time bomb that's going to detonate somewhere around your 13th birthday. For now, though, you get to live the lie. You grow up in suburbia with your white picket fence and your golden retriever and your parents who think the biggest problem they're going to face is teaching you not to put forks in electrical outlets. They read you bedtime stories about princesses and dragons, completely oblivious to the fact that you're going to become something that makes those dragons look like house cats. Your childhood is delightfully, blissfully normal. You learn to walk, you learn to talk, you learn to ride a bike. You scrape your knees and they heal at a normal rate. You get sick and you recover like any other kid. Your parents worry about the usual stuff. Are you eating enough vegetables? Are you making friends? Are you watching too much TV? They don't worry about whether you're going to accidentally level a city block when you sneeze. Sure, there are some signs if you know what to look for. Maybe you're stronger than other kids your age. Maybe you have dreams that feel too real, too vivid. Maybe you can hear conversations happening 3 rooms away, or you know things you shouldn't know, or animals act weird around you. But kids are weird anyway, right? Kids have imaginary friends and night terrors, and they say the darndest things. Your parents just think you're creative. Your teachers might mention that you're different or special in parent-teacher conferences, but they mean it in a good way. You're artistic, or you're smart, or you're athletic. Nobody's thinking genetic aberration that's going to fundamentally challenge the nature of human evolution. They're thinking gifted child who might get into a good college. You make friends easily because you're not scary yet. Other kids don't cross the street when they see you coming. Their parents don't have hushed conversations about whether you should be allowed at birthday parties. You're just another kid in the neighborhood, playing tag and trading Pokemon cards and complaining about homework. This is the golden age of your life, and here's the kicker. You don't even know it. You think this is just the beginning, that life is going to keep getting better from here. You have no idea that you're living on borrowed time, that every normal day is a gift you should be treasuring. Because normal is about to become a distant memory. You hit your 11th birthday, your 12th. You're starting to notice things. Your growth spurts are more dramatic than your friends. Your senses are getting sharper, too sharp. You can smell things that nobody else seems to notice. You can hear your parents talking in their bedroom when you're downstairs watching TV. Food tastes different, stronger, sometimes overwhelming. Your parents notice too, but they rationalize it. He's just growing up fast. She's always been sensitive. It's probably just a phase. They've got perfectly reasonable explanations for everything because the alternative, that their child is becoming something fundamentally different from the rest of humanity, is unthinkable. And you start to feel like you're living in a world made of cardboard. Everything seems fragile, breakable. You have to be careful when you hug people because something inside you whispers that you could hurt them without meaning to. You start having dreams where you're flying, or breathing underwater, or shooting fire from your hands, and you wake up disappointed that it was just a dream. Except sometimes, just for a second, you swear those dreams felt more real than your waking life. Your 13th birthday is approaching, and your parents are planning a party. They're excited because their little baby is becoming a teenager. They're worried about the usual teenage stuff: dating, driving, college prep, rebellion. They think puberty means voice cracks and acne and mood swings. They have no idea that for you, puberty is going to be less awkward growth phase and more genetic bomb going off in your DNA. The night before your 13th birthday, you lie in bed staring at the ceiling, and something feels different. There's an energy humming under your skin, like electricity looking for somewhere to go. Your heartbeat sounds too loud in your ears. Your sheets feel rough against your skin. Every small sound in the house, the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, your parents breathing in the next room, seems amplified. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but your dreams are full of fire and lightning and things that shouldn't exist. You wake up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m., and for just a moment, you could swear your hands were glowing. But when you look at them in the dim light filtering through your curtains, they look perfectly normal. Welcome to the last night of your normal life, kid. Hope you enjoyed the preview, because tomorrow everything changes forever. Remember when regular puberty was your biggest concern? Voice cracks and acne, maybe some awkward conversations about the birds and the bees? Cute. Try waking up with bone claws bursting through your knuckles, or setting your bedroom on fire in your sleep, or accidentally reading your mother's mind during breakfast and finding out what she really thinks about your father's hair loss. Your 13th birthday starts normal enough. Pancakes for breakfast, presents wrapped in shiny paper, your mom taking way too many pictures while your dad grumbles about the flash. You blow out your candles and make a wish, probably something innocent like wanting to make the soccer team or hoping that girl in your English class notices you exist. The universe has a sick sense of humor because you're about to get more attention than you ever wanted. It happens differently for everyone. Some kids get the slow burn. Their powers creep in gradually over weeks or months, giving them time to adjust, to hide it, to figure out what's happening. Others get hit like a truck on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of algebra class. Guess which category you're in? For you, it starts with a fever, not a normal, take some Tylenol and rest fever, but something that feels like your blood has been replaced with molten lava. Your parents take your temperature and the thermometer reads 104, then 105, then it stops working altogether because apparently your body heat has moved beyond the realm of medical instruments. They rush you to the hospital, convinced you're dying. The doctors run test after test, pumping you full of IV fluids and antibiotics, but nothing works. Your temperature keeps climbing, and the weird part is you don't feel sick, you feel charged. Like you're a battery that's been plugged into a power plant. That's when it happens. You're lying in that hospital bed, electrodes stuck to your chest, nurses checking on you every 20 minutes, and suddenly you feel something building inside you. It's not pain exactly. It's more like pressure, like something inside you is trying to get out. The feeling builds and builds until you can't contain it anymore. And then you explode, not literally, though that would almost be simpler. What happens is your power manifests all at once, with no warning, no control, and no consideration for the fact that you're in a building full of sick people and expensive medical equipment. Maybe you're a pyrokinetic, and suddenly every piece of metal in a 50-foot radius starts glowing red hot. The heart monitor catches fire, the IV stand melts, the sprinkler system activates, but the water turns to steam before it hits the ground. Nurses are screaming and patients are being evacuated, and you're just lying there in the middle of it all, completely confused and absolutely terrified. Or maybe you're telekinetic and every piece of equipment in the ICU suddenly starts floating. Wheelchairs are spinning in midair, gurneys are sliding down hallways on their own, and the vending machine in the waiting room is firing soda cans like artillery shells. The hospital goes into lockdown because they think it's some kind of terrorist attack. Or maybe you're a telepath, and suddenly you can hear everyone's thoughts all at once. Hundreds of minds all screaming at you simultaneously. The doctor's thinking about how they've never seen anything like this. The nurse is wondering if they should call the CDC. Your parents praying to whatever God they believe in that their child isn't dying, and you can't turn it off. Every fear, every worry, every private thought is drilling into your skull like a jackhammer. The best part, nobody knows it's you. You're just a sick kid lying in a hospital bed while chaos erupts around you. The doctors think you're having seizures. Your parents think you're hallucinating from the fever. The media, when they inevitably show up, calls it everything from a gas leak to a poltergeist to a government cover-up. But you know the truth. Somehow, impossibly, you're causing all of this. The military shows up first, not to help, but to contain. They evacuate the hospital and set up a perimeter like you're a bomb that might go off, which, let's be honest, isn't that far from the truth. They bring in specialists and scientists and people in hazmat suits who talk about you like you're a specimen instead of a scared kid who just wants to go home. Your parents are kept behind the barriers, watching their child being treated like a biological weapon. Your mom is crying, begging anyone who will listen to let her see you. Your dad is arguing with soldiers and doctors and anyone in a uniform, demanding to know what's wrong with his kid. And you're strapped to a table while people in masks and gloves run tests and take samples and mutter words like unprecedented and anomalous and potentially dangerous. Nobody talks to you directly. Nobody asks how you're feeling or what you're experiencing. You're not a person anymore. You're a problem to be solved. This goes on for days, maybe weeks. Your powers are unstable, unpredictable. Every time you think you have control, something else goes wrong. You try to reach for a glass of water and it shatters in your hand. You try to tell a nurse you're scared and she backs away like you might bite her. You try to sleep and your dreams leak into reality, causing more chaos, more fear, more reasons for everyone to keep their distance. Eventually, someone makes a decision. Maybe it's the doctors, maybe it's the government, maybe it's your parents who are so desperate and scared that they'll agree to anything that might help their child. You're transferred to a special facility, which is a nice way of saying a prison designed specifically for people like you. The place has no windows, reinforced walls, and enough surveillance equipment to stock a spy movie. Your room is more like a cell, with everything bolted down and nothing that could be used as a weapon, which, given your powers, is pretty much everything. You eat processed food from plastic containers, sleep on a mattress that's somehow both too hard and too soft, and spend your days being observed by people who take notes on clipboards and never quite meet your eyes. The worst part isn't the isolation or the tests or the fact that you haven't seen sunlight in months. The worst part is that your parents are allowed to visit once a week, and every time they come, they look a little more broken. They smile and tell you everything's going to be okay, but you can see the truth in their eyes. Their child has become something they don't understand, something they're afraid of, something that might never come home. You're 13 years old and you're already learning the first hard lesson of mutant life. Power doesn't make you special, it makes you dangerous, and dangerous things get locked away. But don't worry, kid. This is just the beginning. It gets so much worse from here. Humans have this funny thing about monsters. They're fine with them in movies. They'll pay good money to be scared by them in books and video games, but put one in their neighborhood and suddenly everyone's a concerned citizen with opinions about property values and public safety. Congratulations. You're now the monster under the bed, except the bed is society, and you're not hiding underneath it. You're trapped right in the middle of it. Let's say the government facility eventually lets you go. Maybe the scientists decide you're not an immediate threat, or maybe some civil rights lawyer makes enough noise about indefinite detention of minors, or maybe your parents mortgage their house to pay for legal fees and expert witnesses. Doesn't matter how it happens. What matters is that you're finally going home, except home isn't home anymore. The first thing you notice is the reporters camped outside your house. Not a lot. This isn't a presidential scandal or a celebrity scandal. It's just a local human interest story about the miracle child, or the mystery teen, or whatever clickbait headline the local news decided to run with. But it's enough. Enough to make your neighbors nervous, enough to make your parents jumpy every time someone drives slowly past the house. Your parents try to act normal. They've redecorated your room while you were gone. Fresh paint, new curtains, a different bed because the old one got destroyed during your episode. They talk about getting back to normal, about putting this whole nightmare behind you, about how everything's going to be okay now that you're home. But they can't look you in the eye when they say it. See, spending months watching their child being treated like a biological weapon changes people. Your mom used to hug you so tight you'd complain about it. Now she gives you these careful, distant hugs like she's afraid you might break. Or worse, like she's afraid you might break her. Your dad used to roughhouse with you, teaching you to throw a football or wrestle on the living room floor. Now he keeps his distance, talks to you in this overly cheerful voice like you're a stranger he's trying to impress. They love you. They really do. But they're also terrified of you, and pretending they're not is exhausting for everyone involved. The neighbors are less subtle about their feelings. Mrs. Henderson from next door, who used to bring over cookies and ask about your grades, now locks her doors when she sees you outside. The Johnsons across the street installed a security system and started parking their car in the garage instead of the driveway. Kids aren't allowed to play in front yards anymore. Parents call them inside when they see you coming. You try going back to school because that's what normal teenagers do, right? Except school isn't ready for you either. The administration has meetings about safety protocols and special accommodations. Your teachers treat you like you're made of glass and dynamite at the same time, too fragile to handle normal expectations, but too dangerous to ignore. Your old friends don't know how to act around you. The lucky ones just avoid you entirely, which is painful but at least honest. The unlucky ones try to pretend nothing's changed, asking questions like, "So what's it like having powers?" and "Can you show me what you can do?" Like you're a party trick instead of a traumatized kid trying to figure out how to live with something you never asked for. You can't show them what you can do, by the way. Not because you don't want to, but because you have no idea how to control it. Your powers are like a car with broken brakes. You might be able to steer a little, but you never know when they're going to slam into something and cause a wreck. So you spend every moment of every day holding your breath, clenching your fists, trying to keep the monster inside you locked up. It's exhausting. Imagine trying to hold back a sneeze for 16 hours a day, except instead of a sneeze, it's the power to level a building. And instead of 16 hours, it's every waking moment for the rest of your life. The isolation gets to you first. Humans are social animals. We need connection, community, belonging. But you're not fully human anymore, are you? You're something else, something new, something that doesn't fit into any of the neat categories society has built for itself. You're too powerful to be normal, too dangerous to be trusted, too human to be written off entirely. So you exist in this weird limbo, watching normal life happen around you like you're looking through a window you can never open. Your grades start slipping because it's hard to concentrate on algebra when you're wondering if your classmates would scream if they knew what you could do. You stop participating in extracurriculars because coach doesn't want the liability and your teammates don't want the distraction. You eat lunch alone because nobody wants to sit at the mutant table. Your parents start having those conversations again, the hushed, worried discussions they think you can't hear. Except now, your hearing is better than it used to be, so you catch every word. They talk about options and alternatives and what's best for everyone involved. They research boarding schools and therapeutic programs and residential facilities. They're planning to send you away again. The worst part is, you understand why. Living with you is like living with a loaded gun that nobody knows how to safely handle. Every family dinner is tense. Every argument could potentially be catastrophic. Every normal teenage outburst carries the risk of actual destruction. Your younger sibling, if you have one, starts having nightmares and doesn't want to be alone with you. Your parents take turns staying up at night, listening for sounds of trouble, ready to call 911 at the first sign that you're losing control. This isn't anyone's fault, but that doesn't make it any less miserable. You start fantasizing about running away, about disappearing somewhere nobody knows what you are. But where would you go? You're a minor with no money, no skills except for powers you can't control, and a face that might be recognized from those news reports. Plus, running away would just prove everyone right, that you are dangerous, that you can't be trusted, that the normal world is better off without you. So you stay and you try to be the perfect child, the most well-behaved teenager in history. You never complain, never argue, never slam doors or raise your voice. You do your chores without being asked, get decent grades despite everything, and smile when relatives visit even though they treat you like you might explode at any moment. But perfect isn't enough when perfect still means potentially catastrophic. The breaking point comes on a Tuesday. It's always a Tuesday, isn't it? You're having a perfectly normal bad day. Failed a test, got ignored by your crush, overheard some classmates making jokes about the freak. Nothing dramatic, just the regular accumulation of small disappointments that make up teenage life. You come home tired and frustrated and just wanting to be alone in your room, but your parents are waiting for you with those careful, concerned expressions that never mean anything good. They've been talking to people, they explain, experts, specialists, people who understand your condition better than they do. They've found a place for you. A school, they call it, but you know what they mean. Another facility, another place where people like you get locked away from the normal world. They talk about how it's for the best, how you'll be happier around others like you, how you'll get the help you need. What they don't say, but what you all know, is that they're scared of you. They love you, but they're scared of you, and they can't live with that fear anymore. You nod and smile and tell them you understand, because what else are you going to do? Argue, get upset, prove them right by losing control and demonstrating exactly why they need to send you away? That night, you lie in your bed, the new bed in your redecorated room that never quite felt like home again, and you realize something that cuts deeper than any of the government tests or media attention or neighborhood whispers. You're not just different from other people, you're alone in a way that most people will never understand. You're a bridge between two worlds that both reject you, too strange for humanity, too human for whatever you're becoming, and the loneliness of that realization is almost worse than the powers themselves. Almost. Don't worry though, kid. Tomorrow someone's going to show up at your door promising that everything's about to get better. He's going to talk about schools and communities and places where you belong. He's going to lie to you with a smile, and you're going to want to believe him so badly that you won't ask the right questions. Lucky you. Then this bald guy in a wheelchair shows up talking about gifted youngsters and safe havens. Sounds great, right? Well, let me tell you about this school. The man calls himself Professor Charles Xavier, and he's got the kind of smile that politicians practice in mirrors. Warm, understanding, completely trustworthy. He rolls up to your front door like he's delivering good news instead of recruiting child soldiers, and somehow your parents invite him in for coffee like he's an old family friend instead of a complete stranger who knows way too much about your personal business. He knows your name before anyone introduces him. He knows about your powers, about what happened at the hospital, about the facility where they kept you for months. He even knows things he shouldn't know, like how you've been having nightmares, or how you broke the bathroom mirror last week when you lost control for just a second, or how your little sister asked your mom if you were going to hurt them. Your parents are impressed by his knowledge. You should be terrified by it. Charles, he insists you call him Charles, like you're equals, like you're not a scared kid, and he's not a man who can rewrite your thoughts without breaking a sweat. Explains that he runs a school for young people like you, gifted individuals, special children who need special education to reach their full potential. He doesn't use the word mutant. That comes later, after he's got his hooks in you. The school, he tells your family, is a place where you can learn to control your abilities, where you can be around others who understand what you're going through, where you can get a quality education while also learning to be the best version of yourself. He makes it sound like Hogwarts for the genetically enhanced, magical, welcoming, full of friendship and wonder and acceptance. Your parents are nodding along like he's describing paradise. They ask about academics and safety protocols and visitation policies, but you can see the relief in their eyes. Someone else is offering to take responsibility for the thing they love but can't handle. Someone who seems to actually understand what you're going through is offering to make their problem disappear. Charles turns to you with those kind, grandfatherly eyes and asks what you think. Do you want to come to his school? Do you want to learn to control your powers? Do you want to be around other young people who won't be afraid of you? Of course you say yes. What 13-year-old wouldn't? He's offering everything you've been desperate for. Belonging, understanding, control, friends who won't run away screaming. He's offering hope when you'd given up on the concept entirely. What he doesn't mention is that his school has been attacked by giant robots 17 times in the past 5 years, or that the education includes extensive combat training because his students have a tendency to end up in life or death situations, or that learning to control your powers often means learning to use them as weapons against people who hate you for existing. He doesn't mention that the school is actually the headquarters for a paramilitary organization that fights a secret war most of the world doesn't even know is happening, or that his gifted youngsters have a mortality rate that would make the Pentagon nervous. He definitely doesn't mention that he's a telepath who's been subtly influencing your parents' emotions throughout this entire conversation, making them more agreeable, more trusting, more willing to hand over their child to a man they just met. But Charles Xavier is a master salesman, and hope is the easiest thing in the world to sell to desperate people. Your parents sign the paperwork that same evening. You're told to pack a bag, just the essentials, since the school provides most of what you'll need. Your mom helps you choose clothes while trying not to cry. Your dad gives you an awkward, careful hug and tells you to call if you need anything, even though you all know that won't be possible. Your little sister watches from the doorway, still not sure if she should be sad you're leaving or relieved that the scary thing in the house is going away. The car that picks you up the next morning is nice. Leather seats, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screams expensive private school rather than child abduction. The driver is polite and professional, asking about your interests and hobbies like you're going to summer camp instead of being shipped off to God knows where. The drive takes hours, winding through countryside that gets more and more isolated as the day goes on. You pass fewer houses, fewer stores, fewer signs of normal human civilization. The cell phone reception gets spotty, then disappears entirely. You're being taken somewhere remote, somewhere hidden, somewhere the outside world can't easily reach. Perfect place for a school, right? Or a prison. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Charles rides with you for part of the journey, continuing his sales pitch. He tells you about the school's history, about the other students you'll meet, about the wonderful opportunities that await you. He talks about his dream of a world where mutants and humans can coexist peacefully, where your gifts are seen as blessings rather than curses. He's got a good dream. Shame it's been getting people killed for decades. The mansion appears through the trees like something out of a fairy tale. Massive, elegant, beautiful in the way that only old money can buy. Perfectly manicured lawns, impressive architecture, the kind of place where rich people send their kids to get the best education money can buy. It looks safe, peaceful, like nothing bad could ever happen in such a lovely setting. You can't see the reinforced walls, the hidden weapon systems, the underground bunkers, or the blackbird hangar disguised as a basketball court. Those come later. Students are playing on the grounds as you arrive, normal-looking teenagers doing normal teenage things, playing frisbee, reading under trees, having conversations on the front steps. They look happy, relaxed, like they belong here, like this is home. What you don't realize is that half of them are carrying scars from the last time the school was attacked, that the girl reading under the tree watched her roommate die in a sentinel assault, that the boy throwing the frisbee has nightmares about the time Apocalypse turned him into a horseman, that the group on the steps are planning how to break into a government facility to rescue captured mutants. But they smile and wave as you get out of the car, and for the first time in months, you feel like maybe you're not alone anymore. Charles wheels up beside you, his hand on your shoulder in a gesture that seems paternal, but is actually possessive. "Welcome to Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters," he says, and his voice is warm with pride and satisfaction. "Welcome home." Home. The word hits you right in the chest because you want it to be true so badly. You want this place to be everything he's promised. You want these people to become your family, your friends, your community. You want to belong somewhere, to be accepted for what you are instead of feared for what you might do. And Charles Xavier is counting on that desperation because desperate people don't ask inconvenient questions. They don't wonder why a school needs military-grade security systems. They don't question why the curriculum includes courses on threat assessment and combat applications. They don't think too hard about why there's a medical bay that looks more like a trauma center than a school nurse's office. You follow Charles through those front doors, and you feel hope blooming in your chest for the first time since your powers manifested. You're thinking about making friends, learning control, finally having a normal life. You have no idea that you just enlisted in a war you don't understand for a cause you haven't chosen, in a conflict that's been raging since before you were born. But don't worry, kid, you'll figure it out soon enough. The orientation packet is on your desk when you get to your room, right between the class schedule and the emergency evacuation procedures. Xavier calls it a school for the gifted. I call it a military academy with better brochures and worse survival rates. Your first clue that this isn't your average boarding school should be the roommate assignments. Most places, they try to match you with someone compatible, similar interests, complementary personalities, maybe someone from the same geographic area. Here they match you based on power compatibility and potential collateral damage. Your roommate is a kid named Bobby who apologizes before he even shakes your hand. Turns out he's a cryokinetic, ice powers, which makes him the perfect counterbalance to your fire-based abilities. Not because you'll be great friends with complementary skills, but because when you inevitably lose control and start burning things down, he can freeze them before you kill everyone in the building. Bobby's nice enough, but he's got the hollow look that everyone gets after their first year here. He shows you around the room, reinforced walls, fire-resistant furniture, a sprinkler system that's been upgraded 3 times after various incidents. The windows don't open supposedly for safety reasons, but really because they don't want you jumping out when you realize what you've gotten yourself into. The walls are pretty soundproof, Bobby mentions casually while unpacking your bag, which is nice when Scott starts having nightmares again. His optic blasts can get pretty loud when he's unconscious. Scott, you learn, is your neighbor down the hall. Cyclops, they call him, though not to his face. He's got laser vision that he can't turn off, which means he's been wearing special glasses since his powers manifested. He hasn't seen his own reflection clearly in 4 years. This is your introduction to the cruel mathematics of mutation. For every cool power, there's usually a price that makes you question whether it was worth it. Your first night, you lie awake listening to the sounds of the mansion. Normal boarding schools have normal nighttime noises. Kids sneaking around after lights out, muffled conversations, maybe someone playing music too loud. Here, you hear things that don't make sense until you've been here longer. Footsteps on the ceiling from the kid who can walk on walls. The soft whoosh of someone teleporting from room to room. A low humming that you eventually realize is the sound of the mansion's defensive systems running their nightly diagnostics. At 3 a.m., an alarm goes off. Not a fire alarm. Something else. Something urgent and metallic that gets everyone moving fast. Bobby sits up in bed, instantly alert in a way that tells you this isn't his first rodeo alarm. Probably just a danger room malfunction, he says, but he's already getting dressed. Sometimes the training programs glitch and try to kill people in their sleep. Danger room. Training programs that try to kill people. These are not normal sentences to hear from your roommate on your first night at a new school. Breakfast the next morning is when you start to get a real sense of what you've walked into. The dining hall looks normal enough, long tables, cafeteria-style food service, the usual teenage social dynamics playing out over eggs and toast, but then you start paying attention to the conversations. Did you finish the tactical analysis essay for Scott's class? Asks a girl with purple hair who's floating 3 feet above her chair. Barely. replies a boy whose skin appears to be made of organic steel. I'm still trying to understand why we needed to memorize the schematics for sentinel detection systems. Because knowledge is power, says another kid, except his voice is coming from a squirrel sitting on the table instead of from his mouth. And power is survival. You sit down with your tray, trying to process what you're hearing. Tactical analysis, sentinel detection. What kind of school teaches teenagers about government robot programs designed to hunt people like them? The kind of school that's not really a school at all. Your first class is Mutant History with Dr. Jean Grey, a woman who seems nice enough until you realize she's reading your thoughts during her lectures to make sure you're paying attention. The curriculum covers the usual historical periods, but with a focus you never got in regular school. The Salem witch trials weren't about witches. They were about early mutants being burned alive by fearful humans. The Holocaust wasn't just about Jewish people and other minorities. It also included systematic extermination of anyone with genetic abnormalities. Humans have always feared what they don't understand, Dr. Gray explains, her voice gentle but her examples horrifying, and they've always found ways to justify that fear. She shows slides of newspaper headlines from the past 50 years. Mutant menace threatens local community. Genetic freaks, humanity's next threat. Should mutants be required to register with the government? These aren't historical artifacts, she continues. These are from last month's news cycle. Your next class is Power Development and Control with Professor Logan, Wolverine himself, though he just goes by Logan here. He's exactly what you'd expect from someone with metal claws and a healing factor that's kept him alive for 2 centuries, blunt, impatient, and completely uninterested in making anyone feel better about their situation. Your powers aren't gifts, he tells your class on the first day. They're weapons. You can use them to protect people, or you can use them to hurt people, but pretending they're anything else is going to get you or someone else killed. The classroom is equipped with targets, protective barriers, and what appears to be a full medical station. This is not theoretical education. This is weapons training. Some of you can shoot fire from your hands, Logan continues, his eyes scanning the room and definitely lingering on you. Some of you can read minds, or teleport, or turn into living diamonds. Doesn't matter what your specific ability is. What matters is that every single person in this room is potentially lethal. A girl in the back raises her hand. What if our power isn't dangerous? What if we just have, like, enhanced senses or something? Logan's smile is not reassuring. Enhanced senses means you can hear enemies coming from 3 blocks away, track targets by smell, or spot snipers from a mile off. In the right hands, every power is dangerous. The question is whether you're going to learn to use yours before someone tries to kill you for having them. The rest of the day follows a similar pattern. Threat assessment and response teaches you how to identify and neutralize various types of anti-mutant weaponry. Basic combat medicine covers field treatment for laser burns, telepathic overload, and something called adamantium poisoning. Stealth and infiltration is exactly what it sounds like, taught by a woman who can turn invisible and walk through walls. By dinner, your head is spinning. This isn't education, it's boot camp. They're not teaching you to control your powers for peaceful purposes. They're teaching you to use them in combat. Every class, every exercise, every conversation assumes that you're going to end up fighting someone who wants to kill you. Is it always like this? You ask Bobby while picking at your meatloaf. Like what? Like we're training for war. Bobby looks at you with something that might be pity. We're not training for war, he says quietly. We're already in one. We have been since the day our powers manifested. The only question is whether we're going to be ready when it comes for us. That night, lying in your reinforced bed in your soundproof room, you stare at the ceiling and try to make sense of what you've gotten yourself into. You came here looking for belonging, for community, for a place where you could be normal. Instead, you found a fortress full of child soldiers disguised as a boarding school. But here's the thing that really gets to you. Despite everything, despite the weapons training and the combat medicine and the constant undercurrent of impending violence, you do feel like you belong here. For the first time since your powers manifested, you're around people who understand what it's like to be dangerous, to be feared, to be different. These kids don't flinch when you accidentally make the dinner candles flare up. They don't cross the street when they see you coming. They don't whisper about you behind your back. At least not about the mutant thing. You're still an outsider, still figuring out where you fit in the complex social dynamics of teenage superhumans, but you're not alone. That matters more than you want to admit. Which is exactly what Xavier was counting on when he recruited you, because belonging is a powerful drug, and people will do almost anything to keep it once they've had a taste, including things they never thought they'd be capable of, including war. Most schools worry about bullying. Here we worry about accidentally getting vaporized by a classmate having a nightmare. Living at Xavier's school requires a complete recalibration of what counts as normal teenage problems. Back in regular school, the biggest dangers were food poisoning from cafeteria mystery meat, getting a detention for talking back to a teacher, or maybe getting stuffed in a locker by some oversized jock. Here the daily hazards read like a comic book writer's fever dream. Your roommate Bobby is a sweet kid, but he talks in his sleep, and when he does, the room temperature drops to about 20 degrees below zero. You wake up most mornings with frost on your blankets and icicles hanging from the ceiling. The school provides extra warm bedding and a space heater, like this is a perfectly normal accommodation, instead of a sign that your living situation violates several laws of physics. Down the hall, there's a girl named Rogue who hasn't been able to touch another person skin to skin in 3 years. Her power absorbs other people's abilities, memories, and life force through physical contact. She wears gloves constantly, long sleeves even in summer, and sits alone at meals, not because she's antisocial, but because accidentally brushing hands while passing the salt could put someone in a coma. Your chemistry lab partner is a kid who can phase through solid matter, which sounds cool until you realize he sometimes does it involuntarily when he's nervous. You're in the middle of an experiment involving potentially explosive compounds when he suddenly becomes intangible and drops his test tube. The tube passes through his hand, shatters on the floor, and fills the room with toxic smoke. Class is canceled while the hazmat team cleans up. This is Tuesday. It's not even considered an unusual Tuesday. The school's medical bay is run by Dr. Cecilia Reyes, and it's equipped better than most trauma centers. They have to be. When your student body includes kids who can spontaneously combust, accidentally create black holes, or project psychic screams that shatter windows, you need medical staff who can handle injuries that don't exist in any textbook. You end up there your first week after a training accident in Logan's class. You're trying to learn fine control of your fire powers, practicing lighting candles without melting them, when another student, a telekinetic, loses focus and accidentally launches a training dummy in your direction. You instinctively throw up a wall of flame to protect yourself, but you're still learning control. Instead of a controlled burst, you unleash a column of fire that reaches the ceiling and triggers every sprinkler in the building. 3 students end up with minor burns. The entire East Wing smells like smoke for a week, and you spend 2 hours in Dr. Reyes's office getting lectures about power control while she treats your singed eyebrows. The good news, she tells you while applying some kind of healing salve, is that this doesn't even make the top 10 worst training accidents this month. That should make you feel better. It doesn't. The worst part about all these dangers isn't the physical risk, though that's real enough. It's the psychological toll of living in a state of constant vigilance. You can't relax, ever. You can't let your guard down, can't trust that the people around you won't accidentally hurt you or that you won't accidentally hurt them. Every interaction is calculated. How close can you sit to someone without risking an incident? How do you navigate teenage romance when holding hands might literally be dangerous? How do you make friends when friendship requires trust, and trust requires vulnerability, and vulnerability in this environment can be fatal? The social dynamics are unlike anything you've experienced. Traditional high school hierarchies, Jocks, nerds, popular kids, outcasts exist here too, but they're complicated by power levels and danger ratings. The most popular kids aren't necessarily the most attractive or charismatic. They're the ones with the most control over their abilities, the ones who can be around others without constant risk. Scott Summers, Cyclops, is student body president not because he's particularly charming, but because his laser vision makes him one of the most powerful students, and his rigid self-control makes him one of the safest. He's been wearing ruby quartz glasses since his powers manifested, never seeing the world without a red filter, never making eye contact without protective lenses. His entire personality has been shaped by the need for constant control. Jean Grey is valedictorian because her telepathic abilities give her academic advantages, but also because reading minds means she knows everyone's secrets, fears, and insecurities. She's kind about it. She doesn't use what she learns to hurt people, but the knowledge changes her relationships with everyone around her. How do you have a genuine friendship with someone who knows your thoughts? The power dynamics create their own form of discrimination. Students with flashy, obviously powerful abilities get respect and fear in equal measure. Students with subtle or useless powers, enhanced senses, minor empathy, the ability to change their hair color, are treated like second-class citizens by their own peers. Then there are the dangerous ones, the students whose powers are so unstable or destructive that they're essentially quarantined from the rest of the school. They attend classes via video link, eat meals alone, sleep in specially reinforced rooms. They see other students through bulletproof glass and wonder if they'll ever be safe enough to rejoin the world. You exist somewhere in the middle of this hierarchy. Your fire powers are flashy enough to get attention, dangerous enough to earn respect, but controlled enough that you're not considered a constant threat. It's a weird kind of privilege, being dangerous enough to matter, but stable enough to belong. The social pressure is intense in ways that normal teenagers can't imagine. It's not just about fitting in or being liked. It's about proving that you're safe, that you belong, that you won't be the one who loses control and hurts someone. Every day is an audition for the right to stay, to be part of this community that's the only place in the world where you might fit in. And the school administration encourages this pressure. They want students policing each other, reporting dangerous behavior, maintaining the illusion of safety through constant surveillance. It's presented as community responsibility, but it's really about control. They're teaching you to fear each other almost as much as you fear the outside world. The nights are the worst. After lights out, when the official supervision ends, the building fills with the sounds of barely contained power. Soft crashes from telekinetic accidents, the smell of ozone from electrical manipulators, the occasional scream from someone having nightmares that leak into reality. You lie awake listening to Bobby's breathing change the room temperature, wondering if tonight's the night someone's going to lose control completely, wondering if you're going to be the one who does it. Because here's the truth they don't tell you in the brochures. Living with power is exhausting. The constant vigilance, the perpetual self-control, the knowledge that a moment's inattention could hurt or kill someone you care about, it wears you down. Every student here is fighting a war against their own nature, and some of them are losing. Last month, a senior had a breakdown during finals week. Stress triggered a massive power surge that turned half the library into crystal. Nobody was hurt, but the message was clear. This could happen to any of you at any time, for any reason. The student was quietly transferred to a more appropriate facility. Nobody talks about what that means, but everybody knows it's not good. So, you learn to live with the fear. Fear of your classmates, fear of yourself, fear of the moment when your control slips and someone gets hurt because of who you are. You learn to make friends at arm's length, to care about people while keeping part of yourself locked away, to find intimacy in shared danger rather than shared vulnerability. It's not the childhood you dreamed of, but it's the only one available to people like you. And despite everything, despite the dangers and the fear and the constant threat of catastrophe, you're grateful for it. Because as terrifying as this place can be, it's still better than being alone with your power, still better than being the only monster in a world of normal people. At least here, you're surrounded by other monsters who understand what it's like to be afraid of yourself. That counts for something, even when it's not enough. Xavier sells this place as a safe haven. Funny thing about havens, they're only safe until someone decides they're not. You've been at the school for 6 months when it happens. 6 months of getting used to the routine, starting to feel like maybe this place really is different, like maybe you found somewhere you can actually belong. You're making friends, getting better at controlling your powers, even starting to believe Charles when he talks about his dream of peaceful coexistence. Then the Sentinels show up. It's a Thursday morning, which somehow makes it worse. Thursdays are supposed to be boring. Chemistry lab, mutant history, combat training, the usual schedule. You're eating breakfast, complaining about a test in Dr. McCoy's advanced genetics class when the alarms start, not the gentle chimes that announce class changes or the steady beep of a fire drill. This is something urgent, metallic, designed to cut through confusion and get everyone moving fast. The sound of real danger. Students look up from their cereal, conversations dying mid-sentence. Even the youngest kids, the ones who've only been here a few weeks, know that this alarm is different. This is the sound they've all been unconsciously dreading since they arrived. Logan appears in the doorway of the dining hall, and you've never seen him look truly worried before. Concerned, annoyed, frustrated, sure, but not this kind of grim, focused tension that makes him look like he's preparing for war. Everyone move to the lower levels. Now no questions, no delays, no stopping to grab anything from your rooms. His voice carries the kind of authority that makes everyone obey without thinking. Older students help the younger ones. Stay together, stay quiet, and do exactly what the teachers tell you. You're moving before you fully process what's happening, following the crowd toward the basement levels you've heard about, but never seen. The architecture changes as you go deeper. The polished wood and elegant decoration of the upper floors gives way to reinforced concrete and steel. This isn't the basement of a school. It's a bunker. The safe room can hold maybe 100 people, which is good because there are about 100 students currently filing in with varying degrees of panic. The walls are thick enough to stop artillery shells, according to Bobby, who seems to know way too much about the school's defensive capabilities for someone who's supposedly here just for education. You're crammed into the bunker with 99 other scared teenagers, and that's when you realize something important. This isn't the first time this has happened. The older students know exactly where to go, exactly what to do. They've practiced this. They've lived through this before. "What's happening?" asks a freshman, a kid who can turn invisible but hasn't figured out how to make his clothes disappear with him. He's flickering in and out of sight with his fear, creating a strobe effect that's making everyone nervous. "Sentinels," says a senior girl whose skin is covered in diamond-hard scales. She says it like she's announcing the weather. Government hunter-killer robots designed specifically to track and eliminate mutants. They've hit the school before. This isn't a theoretical threat or a training exercise. This is a recurring problem. Through the bunker's reinforced walls, you can hear the battle happening above. Explosions, energy blasts, the distinctive whine of Logan's claws meeting metal. The building shakes with impacts that sound like artillery strikes. Your teachers, the people who've been helping you with homework and teaching you about controlling your powers, are upstairs fighting for their lives against machines designed to kill people like you. The battle lasts 3 hours. 3 hours of sitting in a concrete room listening to the sounds of war happening directly above your head. 3 hours of wondering if your teachers are going to survive, if the school is going to survive, if you're going to survive. When the all clear finally sounds, you emerge to find half the school destroyed. The beautiful facade that impressed you on your first day is gone, replaced by rubble and scorch marks and holes that go all the way through the building. The mansion looks like it's been hit by military airstrikes, which essentially it has. Dr. Gray is in the medical bay with what they euphemistically call psychic feedback injuries. Turns out trying to telepathically control giant robots gives you brain hemorrhages. Professor Storm has 2 broken ribs and electrical burns on her hands from overextending her weather powers. Logan looks like he's been through a blender, but his healing factor is already working on the damage. And in the wreckage of what used to be the library, there's a memorial wall with new names on it. Students who didn't make it to the bunker in time. Students who tried to help with the evacuation and got caught by sentinel weapons. Students who've been at this school longer than you've been alive, who died protecting the younger kids, who'll never graduate or go to college or figure out what they want to do with their lives. They were 17, 16, 15 years old. Children, basically. Children who died because they were born different. This is your introduction to the reality of Xavier's dream. It's not just about education and acceptance and learning to control your powers. It's about surviving in a world that builds machines specifically designed to hunt and kill people like you. The cleanup takes weeks. Students and faculty working together to rebuild classrooms, repair the defensive systems, patch the holes in the walls. The work is therapeutic in a way. It gives everyone something to focus on besides the trauma, besides the memorial wall that gets longer every few months. But the real damage isn't to the building. It's to the illusion of safety that you'd started to believe in. You realize that this school isn't a sanctuary, it's a target. Every student here is bait, drawing the attention of every anti-mutant organization, government program, and religious extremist group in the world. The X-Men aren't teachers who occasionally fight bad guys. They're soldiers who occasionally teach classes between battles. Charles Xavier isn't running a school. He's running a recruitment center for his private army. The worst part is the way everyone just accepts it. Classes resume the following Monday. Students joke about having homework assignments interrupted by killer robots. The memorial service is held between chemistry lab and mutant history, like it's just another part of the curriculum. This is normal here. Death, destruction, the constant threat of annihilation. It's all just part of the Xavier experience. You start paying attention to things you'd ignored before, like how every teacher is also a trained combatant, how the school's budget includes line items for defensive capabilities and structural repair contingency, how the guidance counselor's office stocks trauma therapy materials and grief counseling resources. You notice that students don't really graduate from Xavier's school. They transition to being X-Men, or they disappear into government protection programs, or they join underground resistance movements. Very few of them get to have normal lives, normal careers, normal families, because once you're marked as a mutant, once you're on the government's lists and in their databases, normal becomes impossible. The school's college prep courses aren't really about college. They're about preparing you for a life of hiding, running, fighting, or some combination of all three. The career counseling focuses on jobs that can be done under assumed identities in remote locations with minimal human contact. They're not preparing you for the future you want. They're preparing you for the future you're likely to get. And here's the thing that really gets to you. Despite knowing all this, despite seeing the memorial wall and living through the attacks and understanding that this place is more military-based than educational institution, you still don't want to leave. Because where else would you go? Back to parents who are afraid of you, back to a community that sees you as a threat, back to isolation and hiding and pretending to be something you're not. At least here, when the Sentinels come, you're not facing them alone. At least here, when you die, someone will remember your name. That's the genius of Xavier's operation, and maybe its tragedy too. He gives you just enough belonging, just enough community, just enough purpose to make the danger feel worthwhile. He makes you complicit in your own recruitment by making you grateful for the privilege of serving his cause. You're not a student anymore, not really. You're a soldier in training, and the enemy has already found your base. The only question now is whether you'll be ready when they come for you personally, and they will come for you. Count on it, because that's what it means to be a mutant in this world. You're not just different, you're hunted, and no amount of education or training or good intentions is going to change that fundamental reality. Welcome to the war, kid. Hope you're a quick learner. Graduation ceremony, more like deployment day. Cap and gown, try Kevlar and trauma. You've been at Xavier's for 3 years when Charles finally decides you're ready for the real job. 3 years of training, studying, surviving Sentinel attacks, and watching classmates disappear into the night because they weren't adapting well to the program. 3 years of becoming exactly what Xavier wanted you to become, a weapon with just enough education to think you're making your own choices. There's no actual graduation ceremony, by the way, no proud parents in folding chairs, no valedictorian speech, no throwing caps in the air. One day you're a student, and the next day Logan's knocking on your door at 5 a.m. telling you to suit up because you're needed in the field. "Welcome to the X-Men, kid," he says, tossing you a uniform that's definitely not made by any normal clothing manufacturer. Try not to die on your first mission makes the paperwork complicated. The uniform is black leather and Kevlar with built-in communication systems and enough armor to stop small arms fire. It's also yellow and blue because apparently even in a secret war against genocide, Charles insists on maintaining brand recognition. Your first mission briefing happens in the war room, the Strategic Planning Center, deep beneath the school. The walls are covered with monitors showing global mutant incidents, government facility locations, and what Charles euphemistically calls areas of concern. It looks like the kind of place where actual wars get planned, which should tell you something about what you've signed up for. Humanitarian mission, Scott explains, because that's what they call everything here. Government facility in Nevada has been holding mutant prisoners without trial. We're going in to extract them. Humanitarian mission. Right. You're about to break into a federal facility, fight trained soldiers, and commit what any court would classify as terrorism, but it's humanitarian because the people you're saving are mutants. The moral arithmetic of Xavier's war is simple. Mutant lives matter more than human laws. Human authorities can't be trusted to protect mutant rights, so mutants have to protect themselves. And if that means breaking some laws, well, history will vindicate you. You want to believe it, God help you, you do believe it, because the alternative is accepting that everything you've been taught for 3 years is a lie. The mission goes wrong from the start, because missions always go wrong. Intelligence was faulty, security was heavier than expected, and the prisoners you're supposed to rescue have been drugged into compliance. What should have been a quick extraction turns into a running firefight through a government black site facility. You kill your first human being in a hallway in Nevada at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. He's a guard, probably someone's father, maybe someone's husband. He's got a wedding ring and a picture of 2 kids in his wallet. You know this because you check afterward, though you'll never know why. He shoots first, aims for your head, and your fire powers react before your brain catches up. 1 second he's a person with a family and a life, and the next second he's ash and bone fragments scattered across government-issue linoleum. Scott puts his hand on your shoulder afterward and tells you it was self-defense, that you did what you had to do, that sometimes the only way to save innocent lives is to take guilty ones. Jean tries to telepathically ease your trauma, but you tell her not to. You want to remember this, want to carry the weight of it, because someone should. The mutants you rescue are grateful, traumatized, broken by months or years of imprisonment and experimentation. They thank you through tears, call you heroes, tell you that people like you are the only hope for people like them. It should make you feel better about the guard. It doesn't. Back at the school, you're debriefed by Charles himself. He's proud of your performance, impressed by your power control, pleased that you handled the moral complexity of the situation with such maturity. He talks about the greater good, about necessary sacrifices, about how every war requires soldiers willing to do difficult things for righteous causes. He doesn't talk about the guards' kids, who are now orphans. He doesn't talk about the psychological cost of killing, the way it changes you in ways that can't be changed back. He doesn't talk about how each mission makes the next one easier, how each life you take makes taking the next one require less justification. But you figure that out on your own soon enough. Your second mission is 3 weeks later. Then your third. Then missions stop feeling like events and start feeling like a job. A horrible, necessary job that you're getting disturbingly good at. You rescue mutant children from government programs. You sabotage anti-mutant research facilities. You infiltrate hate groups and gather intelligence on their plans. You fight sentinels, other mutants working for the government, and increasingly often, normal humans who've been told that you're the enemy. Each mission has a body count. Each victory comes with a price. Each person you save requires sacrificing someone else. if not literally killing them, then destroying their lives, their careers, their faith in the institutions they serve. The worst part isn't the violence, though that's bad enough. The worst part is how quickly you adapt to it, how normal it becomes to plan around acceptable casualty rates and collateral damage assessments. The worst part is waking up one day and realizing that you've become exactly what the anti-mutant propaganda says you are: a dangerous individual who operates outside the law and uses violence to achieve political goals. A terrorist, in other words. A terrorist with good intentions and noble goals, but still a terrorist. The public doesn't see your good intentions, of course. They see the destroyed facilities, the dead guards, the mysterious attacks on government installations. They see the news reports about mutant extremists and genetic terrorists, and they think those terms are accurate. And here's the thing that keeps you awake at night. Maybe they are. You're saving mutant lives by taking human ones. You're protecting the innocent by killing the guilty. You're fighting for equality by waging war against the status quo. The moral equations are complex enough that you can justify almost anything if you think about it the right way. Charles teaches you to think about it the right way. He's very good at that. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between missions, you remember the guard in Nevada. You remember his wedding ring, his kids' pictures, the way he looked surprised rather than angry when your fire took him. You remember that he was probably just a working-class guy doing a job he thought was protecting people, and you wonder if there was another way. You wonder if you've become the monster that scared parents use to frighten their children into behaving. You wonder if you were always going to end up here, if this is just what happens to people with your kind of power. You wonder if Xavier saw this in you from the beginning, if that's why he recruited you in the first place. But wondering doesn't change anything. The missions keep coming, the body count keeps climbing, and the war keeps escalating. You're in it now, whether you like it or not, and the only way out is through. Or so you tell yourself. Because the alternative, that you've been manipulated into becoming a killer for someone else's cause, is too horrible to accept. Not yet, anyway. Eric's got a point, you know. Why protect people who want you dead? Why not be the monster they already think you are? 2 years into your X-Men career, and you're starting to crack. Not obviously. You still complete missions, follow orders, maintain the facade of believing in Charles's dream, but the doubt is growing like cancer, eating away at your certainty, making you question everything you've been taught about right and wrong. The breaking point comes during what should have been a routine rescue mission. Intelligence says there's a government facility in Montana holding a dozen mutant children, ages 8 to 14. Kids who manifested early got taken from their families, disappeared into the system. Standard X-Men mission profile: get in, extract the targets, get out with minimal casualties. Except when you breach the facility, you find out the intelligence was wrong. The children aren't prisoners, they're patients. The facility isn't a detention center. It's a medical research hospital trying to find ways to help young mutants control their powers safely. The experiments you're there to stop, their therapy sessions, the torture devices you're supposed to destroy, their medical equipment designed to monitor dangerous power fluctuations and prevent accidents. You realize this about 30 seconds after you've already killed 2 security guards and set fire to a laboratory full of irreplaceable research data. Dr. Sarah Chen, the facility director, doesn't run when she sees you. She stands in front of the children's ward and explains what they're really doing here, how they're working with mutant families to develop safe treatment protocols, how they've successfully helped dozens of children learn to control powers that were killing them, how the research you just destroyed represented years of work that could have saved lives. These children aren't prisoners, she says, and you can hear the genuine caring in her voice. They're patients. Their families brought them here because their powers were hurting them, hurting others. We're trying to help. You want to believe she's lying. You want her to be the villain, because if she's not, then you are. But then one of the children, a little girl who can't be more than 10, phases through the wall and asks Dr. Chen if the bad men are going to take her away from the nice place where she's learning not to hurt people by accident. The bad men. She's talking about you. Scott makes the call to abort the mission and withdraw, but the damage is done. Two good people are dead, valuable research is destroyed, and a program that was actually helping young mutants has been crippled. All because your intelligence was wrong, because you acted on assumptions, because you've been trained to see enemies everywhere. The drive back to the school is silent. Nobody talks about the mission. Nobody debriefs what went wrong. Nobody mentions the looks of terror and confusion on those children's faces when they saw you in your X-Men uniforms. Charles tries to frame it as a learning experience, a reminder that intelligence gathering is crucial, that the fog of war creates tragic misunderstandings. He talks about how the facility was still government-run, how there was no guarantee the children's welfare would remain a priority, how you were acting on the best information available, but you know bullshit when you hear it, and that's grade A bullshit. You killed 2 people and terrorized a bunch of sick children because you'd been conditioned to assume the worst about human motivations. Because Charles has spent years teaching you that humans can't be trusted with mutant welfare, that government facilities are inherently suspect, that violence is often the only solution. That night, you're standing on the mansion's roof trying to make sense of what you've become when you hear footsteps behind you. You expect it to be Logan, or maybe Scott coming to give you another pep talk about the greater good. Instead, it's Eric Lensher, Magneto himself. He's not supposed to be here. Security protocols, restraining orders, the fact that he's technically a terrorist wanted by every government on the planet, none of that seems to matter when someone can control all magnetic metals and the school's defenses are largely made of steel. "Rough day?" he asks, settling beside you on the roof like you're old friends instead of enemies. You should alert security, call for backup, do something other than sit here talking to one of the world's most dangerous mutants, but you're tired, confused, and honestly curious about what he wants. "Charles told you about Montana?" you ask. "Charles didn't need to tell me anything. It's written all over your face." Eric's voice is gentle, paternal in a way that Charles's never quite manages to be. "You're questioning everything, aren't you? Wondering if the people you killed today deserve to die, wondering if you're fighting for the right side." You don't answer, but you don't need to. Eric's been reading people longer than you've been alive. "Let me tell you something about Charles Xavier," Eric continues. "He's a good man with noble intentions who's convinced himself that humans and mutants can coexist peacefully. He's been fighting for that dream for decades, and what does he have to show for it? Dead students, destroyed schools, and a world that hates us more every year. You want to argue, but the memorial wall in the mansion's lobby has a lot of names on it, and that wall gets longer every time you rebuild the school after another attack. Charles teaches you to be ashamed of your power," Eric says, "to hide it, control it, use it only in service of people who fear and hate you. He's turned you into a weapon pointed at other mutants, fighting to preserve a system that sees you as an abomination." "We save mutant lives," you say, but the words sound hollow even to you. You save some mutant lives while sacrificing others. How many mutants died while you were busy playing hero with humans who would thank you by building better sentinels? Eric stands, dusting off his coat. How many children manifested their powers today and got dragged away by government agents while you were protecting a research facility that will use everything they learn to find new ways to neutralize mutants? He's not wrong, and that's what makes this conversation so dangerous. Every mission you go on, every human facility you leave intact, every compromise you make in the name of Charles's dream, it all comes at the cost of mutants who needed help you didn't provide. "I'm not asking you to join me," Eric says, which is somehow more persuasive than any recruitment pitch could be. "I'm just asking you to think about what you're really fighting for, Charles's dream of coexistence or mutant survival in a world that's already chosen sides." He's gone before you can respond, vanishing into the night like he was never there, but his words stick with you, echoing in your head during training sessions and mission briefings and quiet moments when you're supposed to be doing homework. Because here's the thing, every argument Eric made is supported by evidence you've seen yourself. The government facilities that keep getting rebuilt no matter how many times you destroy them. The anti-mutant legislation that keeps passing despite Xavier's political lobbying. The Sentinel programs that keep getting better funded, better equipped, better at hunting people like you. Charles talks about progress, about hearts and minds, about incremental change and moral victories, but the memorial wall keeps getting longer, and the safe houses keep getting attacked, and the world keeps building better weapons to kill mutants. Maybe Eric's right. Maybe the dream of coexistence is just that, a dream. Maybe the only way to protect mutants is to stop pretending that humans want to be protected from you and start making them too afraid to try. Maybe it's time to stop being the good guys. You don't make any decisions that night, don't dramatically switch sides or abandon your principles, but something changes in how you think about the missions, the casualties, the endless cycle of violence that defines your life. You start wondering what would happen if you stopped pulling your punches, if you stopped worrying about human casualties and focused entirely on mutant welfare, if you embraced the fear instead of trying to overcome it. You start wondering what it would feel like to win for once, instead of just surviving. And that wondering is exactly what Eric was counting on when he came to visit you on that roof. Because doubt, once planted, has a way of growing. And desperate people will consider options they never thought they'd entertain. Even options that involve becoming the monster everyone already thinks you are. Congratulations, you've officially become everything your parents feared and everything humans hate. How's that working out for you? The transition doesn't happen overnight. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to become a villain. It's a gradual slide, justified one small compromise at a time, until you look around and realize you're standing somewhere you never intended to be. For you, it starts with a simple question during a mission briefing. What if we didn't worry about human casualties this time? Scott looks at you like you've suggested burning down an orphanage. That's not who we are, he says, which is the standard X-Men response to any suggestion that involves prioritizing mutant welfare over human life. Isn't it, you ask? We're already killing people. We're already destroying property. We're already operating outside the law. The only difference is we're being inefficient about it. Jean tries to telepathically nudge you back toward more acceptable thoughts, but you've learned to shield your mind over the years. That's another thing they don't tell you about Xavier's school. They teach you to protect yourself from mental manipulation, then act surprised when you use those skills against them. If we stop holding back, you continue, if we stop worrying about being the good guys, we could actually win some of these fights. We could end the Sentinel program permanently instead of just delaying it. We could make the government too afraid to target mutants instead of just making them more creative about it. Logan gives you a look that's part understanding, part warning. He's been where you are, knows the temptation of letting go, of embracing the monster that lives inside every person with real power. That path doesn't lead where you think it does, kid, he says quietly, but you're not listening anymore. You're tired of being reactive, tired of playing defense, tired of watching friends die for a dream that gets more impossible every year. You're tired of being the responsible one while the world burns around you. The next mission, you're a little more aggressive than usual. Nothing dramatic. You just don't work quite so hard to minimize casualties. Don't spend quite so much energy on precision when broad strokes would be more effective. A few more guards die, a few more facilities burn completely instead of just partially. The mission succeeds faster, more completely than usual. The mutants you rescue are safer because the threat has been eliminated more thoroughly. The tactical outcome is objectively better. Charles lectures you about proportional response and moral leadership, but the results speak for themselves. When you're willing to be the monster, people get out of your way. When you embrace the fear instead of fighting it, you become more effective at protecting the people you care about. It's intoxicating, that effectiveness. For years, you've been fighting with one hand tied behind your back, and suddenly you're allowed to use both. For years, you've been apologizing for your existence, and suddenly you're demanding the respect that comes with being genuinely dangerous. The slide accelerates. Each mission gets a little bloodier, a little more destructive, a little less concerned with what the history books will think about your methods. You start volunteering for the missions other X-Men won't take, the ones that require moral flexibility and a willingness to cross lines. Scott stops assigning you to teams with younger members. Jean stops trying to telepathically counsel you back toward the light. Logan starts looking at you the way he used to look at Sabretooth, like something that might need to be put down someday. But the missions keep succeeding. The body count keeps climbing, but so does the rescue count. You're saving more mutants than ever, protecting more innocents than ever, striking more decisive blows against anti-mutant operations than ever. You're becoming the most effective X-Man in the field, and you're doing it by embracing everything the X-Men are supposed to stand against. The breaking point comes during a mission to stop a new Sentinel manufacturing facility. Intelligence says it's heavily defended, that a surgical strike won't be enough, that you'll need to use overwhelming force to prevent the factory from coming online. You volunteer to lead the mission, and Charles reluctantly agrees. Your success rate is too high to ignore, even if your methods are becoming increasingly problematic. The facility is everything intelligence said it would be. Heavily fortified, well defended, staffed by people who know exactly what they're building and why. These aren't confused security guards or misguided researchers. These are people who wake up every morning and go to work building machines specifically designed to hunt and kill children for the crime of being born different. You don't hold back. The attack is swift, brutal, and complete. The factory burns, the research is destroyed, and everyone inside dies in fires hot enough to melt steel. You don't give anyone time to surrender. Don't offer quarter to people who wouldn't offer it to you. Don't waste energy on moral complexity when the moral equations are actually quite simple. They build machines to kill mutant children. You kill them first. Problem solved. The mission is a complete success by every tactical measure. The Sentinel program is set back months, maybe years. Hundreds of mutant lives are saved. The message sent to other potential Sentinel manufacturers is clear and unambiguous. But when you get back to the school, Charles is waiting for you with that disappointed expression that used to make you feel guilty. 87 people died in that facility, he says. Engineers, technicians, administrative staff, people with families, people with children, people building machines to murder children, you reply. People who knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. There might have been another way. If we'd tried negotiation, if we'd exposed them publicly, if we'd found a solution that didn't require mass murder. If. You're surprised by how calm you sound, how little Charles's disapproval affects you anymore. How many mutants die while we're trying all those other ways? How many children get taken by Sentinels while we're negotiating with the people building them? Charles looks older than you've ever seen him, worn down by decades of trying to find moral solutions to immoral problems. When we become the monsters they say we are, we prove them right. We validate their fear, justify their hatred, give them permission to build more Sentinels. They're going to build more Sentinels anyway, you say. At least now they'll be afraid while they're doing it. That night, you pack your bags, not because anyone asks you to leave, but because you finally understand that you don't belong here anymore. Xavier's school is for people who still believe in the dream, who still think coexistence is possible, who still care more about being right than being effective. You're not one of those people anymore. You leave a note for Logan, thanking him for the training and apologizing for not listening to his warnings. You leave another for Jean, asking her not to follow you telepathically, not to try to save you from choices you're making with full awareness of their consequences. You don't leave anything for Charles. He'll understand soon enough. The world is full of organizations that share your new perspective on the mutant-human conflict, groups that believe mutants are the next step in evolution, that humans are a dying species clinging to relevance, that the future belongs to those with the power to claim it. Groups led by a man named Eric Lensher, who's been waiting for people like you to realize what you really are. Groups that call themselves the Brotherhood of Mutants, and they're very interested in recruiting former X-Men who've seen the light. You make the call from a payphone in Chicago, using a number Eric gave you months ago on a rooftop where he planted seeds of doubt that have finally grown into certainty. I want to join, you tell the voice on the other end. Welcome to the winning side, comes the reply, and for the first time in years, You smile. You know what's worse than being a monster, realizing you became one for nothing. 2 years with the Brotherhood, and you've never felt more powerful or more empty. Eric welcomed you with open arms and understanding words, giving you everything Charles never could. Permission to be exactly as dangerous as you are, validation for the anger you've carried since your powers first manifested, and most importantly, targets worthy of your rage. Government facilities burn. Anti-mutant politicians disappear. Sentinel production sites become smoking craters. Research laboratories developing mutant cures experience catastrophic accidents. You've become very good at making people suffer for the crime of hating what you are. The Brotherhood appreciates your efficiency. Unlike the X-Men, they don't waste time on moral hand-wringing or proportional response. When someone threatens mutants, you eliminate the threat. Simple, clean, effective. The world has learned to fear you in ways it never feared the X-Men. Your name appears on terrorist watch lists and government kill orders. Parents use you as a boogeyman to frighten their children into behaving. Anti-mutant groups cite your actions as proof that mutants are inherently dangerous, inherently evil, inherently incompatible with human civilization. You've become exactly what they always said you were, and it feels like victory. Until it doesn't. The mission that changes everything seems routine enough. Another Sentinel facility, another group of engineers and technicians building machines to hunt your people. The intel is solid. The target is legitimate. The moral justification is clear. Everything by the book as far as Brotherhood operations go. But when you breach the facility, you find something unexpected in one of the research labs. Not weapons or torture devices or the usual array of anti-mutant technology. You find cure research, real cure research, led by a mutant scientist whose daughter was born with powers that are slowly killing her. Dr. Marcus Shaw is a telekinetic who spent years working for the government before defecting to private research. His 8-year-old daughter inherited his abilities but not his control. Her powers activate randomly, violently, uncontrollably. She can't touch anyone without risking serious injury. She can't go to school, can't have friends, can't live anything resembling a normal life. She's dying from her own mutation, her body unable to handle the energy surges that come with each power manifestation. The cure research isn't about eliminating mutants, it's about saving one little girl who got the worst possible genetic lottery. Please, Dr. Shaw begs when he sees you standing in his laboratory. I know what this looks like, but we're trying to help her. She's just a child. She doesn't deserve this. The little girl is in a containment room nearby, unconscious in a medical bed surrounded by monitoring equipment. She looks peaceful when she's not accidentally destroying everything around her. She looks like any other sick child whose parents would do anything to save her. You're supposed to kill Dr. Shaw and destroy the research. Those are your orders, clear and unambiguous. Cure research is an existential threat to mutant kind, regardless of the motivations behind it. Eric has been very clear about this. Any attempt to eliminate mutation must be stopped, no matter how sympathetic the circumstances. But standing there looking at a father desperate to save his dying daughter, you remember something you'd forgotten in all the years of violence and ideology and righteous anger. You remember being 13 years old, terrified and confused, with parents who would have done anything to help you if they'd known how. You remember what it felt like to be afraid of your own power, to hurt people without meaning to watch your family fall apart because of something you never chose and couldn't control. You remember that not every mutant story is about persecution and prejudice. Sometimes it's just about a child who needs help. Dr. Shaw isn't building weapons. He's not working for the government or trying to commit genocide. He's a father trying to save his daughter using the only tools available to him. The research could potentially help thousands of mutants who are suffering from their own powers, who need treatment rather than training, who want to be normal more than they want to be special. For the first time in years, you hesitate. The hesitation costs you. While you're standing there questioning everything you thought you knew about the mission, about the cause, about the clear moral lines that have guided your actions for the past 2 years, backup security arrives. The firefight is brief but intense. Dr. Shaw dies in the crossfire, killed by a security guard's bullet while trying to protect his research. His daughter dies 3 days later when her powers surge without the experimental treatments that might have saved her. You complete the mission, destroy the facility, eliminate the witnesses. But the victory feels hollow in ways you can't explain. That night you call Eric to report the success. He's pleased with the outcome, satisfied that another threat to mutant independence has been neutralized. He talks about the importance of preventing any attempt to normalize mutation, about maintaining mutant genetic integrity, about the necessity of hardline positions in an existential conflict. But all you can think about is a little girl who died because you followed orders instead of thinking for yourself. All you can think about is how much you've changed since you were the scared kid in a hospital bed, how far you've traveled from the person who just wanted to help people. All you can think about is the fact that somewhere along the way, you became someone who kills fathers trying to save their daughters. The doubt spreads like infection. You start questioning other missions, other targets, other moral certainties that seemed so clear when you were angry enough to burn the world down. You start seeing the complexity in situations that ideology had made simple, the humanity in people that propaganda had made into monsters. You start remembering why you wanted to be a hero in the first place. The breaking point comes 6 months later during a Brotherhood assault on Xavier's school. Not a rescue mission or a tactical strike, a full assault designed to prove that Charles's dream of coexistence is dead, that moderate mutants are traitors to their own species, that the future belongs to those willing to seize it by force. You're assigned to the team attacking the residential wing where the younger students sleep. Children mostly, kids who haven't chosen sides in this war, who just want to learn to control their powers and maybe have something resembling normal lives. Kids like you used to be, standing in the hallway outside a dormitory full of sleeping teenagers. You realize that you've become everything you once feared. You're the monster parents warn their children about, the proof that mutants are dangerous, the justification for every Sentinel program and registration act and concentration camp. You're about to murder children to prove a political point. The other Brotherhood members are moving through the building systematically, efficiently. You can hear explosions, screams, the sounds of a school becoming a battlefield. Your former teachers and classmates are fighting for their lives against an enemy that includes you. You think about Bobby, your old roommate, probably scared and confused in some basement bunker wondering why this is happening. You think about the freshman who asked you about power control during your last week as a student. You think about all the kids who look up to X-Men as heroes, not knowing that some of those heroes become villains. You think about the memorial wall in the mansion lobby, and how many names will be added to it tonight. And you make a choice. Instead of attacking the dormitory, you turn around and start fighting your way back through the building. Not toward the exit, toward the other Brotherhood members. You use your fire powers against people who trusted you, who considered you family, who welcomed you when the X-Men cast you out. You betray everything you've believed for 2 years, because in this moment, you remember what you believed before that. You remember wanting to save people instead of proving points. The battle turns when you switch sides. Your knowledge of Brotherhood tactics and Eric's strategy gives the X-Men advantages they desperately need. Your powers, turned against your former allies, help end the assault before it becomes a massacre. But victory comes with a price. Eric himself confronts you in the burning wreckage of the mansion's east wing, and his disappointment cuts deeper than Charles's ever did. "You were becoming everything we needed you to be," he says sadly. "Everything I hoped you could be. Why throw that away for people who will never appreciate what you've sacrificed?" "Because they're children," you reply. "Because this isn't about ideology or evolution or the future of the species. This is about kids who just want to sleep safely in their beds." Eric's response is swift and brutal. Metal from the destroyed building responds to his will, wrapping around you like serpents, crushing you with the force of his disappointment and rage. You feel bones breaking, organs rupturing, your body failing under the assault of someone who was once your mentor and father figure. But with your last breath, you manage to burn through the containment-holding doctor. Shaw's cure research you've been carrying since that night in the laboratory, research that might save children like his daughter, research that represents hope instead of fear. You throw the data storage device to Scott, who's fighting his way through the wreckage to reach wounded students. For the ones who need help, you gasp, and then Eric's metal closes around your throat and the world goes dark. You don't live to see how the war ends. But in your final moments, you remember what it felt like to be a hero instead of a monster. You remember why that matters, even when nobody's keeping score, especially then. Redemption isn't a destination, kid. It's a lifetime of work with no guarantee of forgiveness. Here's the thing they don't tell you about dying heroically. Sometimes it doesn't stick. Sometimes your healing factor kicks in just enough to keep you breathing while your body repairs damage that should have been fatal. Sometimes you wake up in a medical bay 3 weeks later with metal scars and memory gaps and the knowledge that you tried to do the right thing at the end. Sometimes the universe gives you a second chance you're not sure you deserve. You wake up alone, which is probably for the best. The X-Men saved your life because that's what X-Men do, but that doesn't mean they trust you. It doesn't mean they forgive you for the 2 years you spent hunting them, killing their allies, proving every terrible thing their enemies said about mutants. Dr. Reyes explains your injuries with clinical detachment. Crushed ribs, punctured lungs, severe internal bleeding, traumatic brain injury from oxygen deprivation. You were dead for 4 minutes before your healing factor, a secondary mutation you never knew you had, kicked in and started the slow process of bringing you back. Physically, you'll recover completely, she says, not quite meeting your eyes. Psychologically, that's not my department. No, the psychological recovery is your problem to figure out. And it's a big problem, because you remember everything, every mission with the Brotherhood, every life you took, every choice that led you away from the person you used to be. The memories are crystal clear, unfiltered by the comfortable distance of time or the soft focus of rationalization. You remember Dr. Shaw begging for his daughter's life. You remember the fear in children's eyes when they saw you in Brotherhood colors. You remember the satisfaction you felt when enemies burned, the intoxicating rush of being feared instead of pitied. You remember liking it. That's the part that makes redemption so complicated. It wasn't like you were brainwashed or coerced or forced to become a monster. You chose it, step by step, justification by justification, until you became someone who could look at a dormitory full of sleeping children and seriously consider setting it on fire. The X-Men don't know what to do with you. Technically, you're a war criminal wanted by multiple governments. You've killed their friends, destroyed their operations, spent 2 years proving that every anti-mutant extremist was right about the threat mutants pose to human civilization. But you also saved the school. You turned against your allies to protect children. You died, temporarily, trying to prevent a massacre. Charles wants to believe in redemption because that's who he is. Logan thinks you're too dangerous to trust because that's who he is. Scott wants to put you on trial because that's what justice looks like. Jean wants to help you heal because that's what compassion looks like. Nobody knows what you want, including you. They keep you in a secured medical room while they figure it out. Not a cell, exactly, but not freedom either. Reinforced walls, monitored communications, armed guards who try to pretend they're there for your protection rather than everyone else's. You have visitors, sometimes. Bobby stops by to tell you about the students who were injured in the attack, the ones who are having nightmares, the ones who ask if the bad mutants are coming back. He doesn't say it's your fault, but he doesn't have to. Rogue visits once, staying carefully on the other side of the room because her power makes physical comfort impossible anyway. She tells you about the memorial service for Brotherhood members who died during the assault, how some of them were people she'd known before they chose sides. War makes enemies out of people who should have been friends, she says. Makes you wonder if any of it's worth it. You don't have an answer for that. You're not sure there is one. The hardest visitor is a girl named Sarah Chen-Doctor, Shaw's niece, the one who inherited his research notes after his death. She's 17, a telekinetic like her uncle, but with better control. She's also dying from the same genetic complications that killed her cousin. She doesn't come to forgive you or to seek closure or to find meaning in her family's tragedy. She comes because she needs the research data you gave to Scott, the cure research that might save her life and the lives of others like her. "I know you killed my uncle," she says matter-of-factly. "I know you destroyed his laboratory and set back his research by years. I know you're responsible for my cousin's death." You wait for the accusation, the anger, the demand for justice that any reasonable person would make. Instead, she says, "Thank you for saving the data." It turns out, Doctor, Shaw's research was further along than anyone realized. The cure isn't a weapon to eliminate mutation, it's a treatment to help mutants whose powers are killing them. Sarah and dozens of others like her now have hope for survival because you chose to carry that data instead of destroying it. He would have wanted his work to help people, Sarah continues, even people who killed him. That's the kind of person he was. She leaves without asking for apologies or explanations or promises to be better. She just wanted you to know that something good came from all the destruction, that redemption sometimes looks like practical help rather than moral transformation. After 3 months of medical supervision and psychological evaluation and endless debates about what to do with you, Charles makes a decision that surprises everyone, including you. He offers you a job, not as an X-Man, that trust hasn't been rebuilt yet, may never be rebuilt, but as someone who can help mutants who are struggling with the darker aspects of their powers, who understand the temptation to use those powers for revenge, who know what it's like to lose yourself in the intoxicating freedom of being truly dangerous. You understand the path toward becoming a monster, Charles explains. Perhaps that understanding can help others avoid it. It's not forgiveness exactly, it's not redemption either, it's just work. Difficult, necessary work that needs someone who's made the mistakes you've made and lived to regret them. You accept because the alternative is spending the rest of your life hiding from the consequences of your choices, and you're tired of running from yourself. The work is harder than any mission you've ever undertaken, harder than infiltrating government facilities or fighting sentinels or surviving Brotherhood training. You counsel young mutants who are angry enough to burn the world down, and you have to find ways to convince them not to without being a hypocrite about your own choices. You help teenagers who are struggling with powers that could kill people, and you have to teach control to kids while admitting that you once chose not to exercise that control yourself. You work with mutants who have been radicalized by anti-human groups, and you have to explain why coexistence might be possible while acknowledging that you once believed it wasn't. Every day is a reminder of who you used to be, who you became, and who you're trying to be now. Every success is shadowed by the knowledge of your failures. Every life you help save is weighed against the lives you took. It's not heroic work. Nobody writes songs about counselors and social workers in the quiet, unglamorous business of helping people heal from trauma. Nobody builds monuments to people who prevent tragedies rather than avenging them. But it matters. Slowly, gradually, one conversation at a time, you start to build something that looks like meaning from the wreckage of your choices. You start to understand that redemption isn't about being forgiven for what you've done. It's about doing better going forward, regardless of whether anyone notices or cares. It's about choosing to be useful instead of destructive, even when destruction would be easier. It's about accepting that you'll never be the hero you once wanted to be, but maybe you can keep others from becoming the monster you once were. That's not nothing. On the good days, it almost feels like enough. You can't undo the damage you've done. The best you can do is try to balance the scales. 5 years into your new life as a counselor and mentor, and you're starting to understand what Logan meant when he talked about the weight of choices. It doesn't get lighter over time. You just get stronger at carrying it. The work is good, meaningful in ways that violence never was. You've helped dozens of young mutants avoid the paths you took, guided them through the anger and fear and temptation that come with discovering you're dangerous. Some of them listen, learn from your mistakes, find better ways to channel their power and their rage. Others don't. Others choose the Brotherhood or the government or independent terrorism, and you have to live with the knowledge that your own example might have contributed to their radicalization. It's hard to preach restraint when everyone knows you once chose abandon it. Hard to advocate for coexistence when you once tried to prove it was impossible. The irony isn't lost on you. You've become more effective at preventing violence than you ever were at committing it. The kids you counsel don't become terrorists, partly because they can see where that path leads, can talk to someone who's walked it and come back broken. Your reputation helps in unexpected ways. When angry young mutants hear that the person counseling them once killed dozens of humans in service of mutant supremacy, they listen more carefully than they would to someone who's always been good. They trust your understanding of their rage because you've felt it yourself, acted on it, lived with the consequences. But that reputation also follows you everywhere. You can't go to a grocery store without someone recognizing you from old news footage, can't attend a school function without parents whispering about the reformed terrorist who works with their children. The world has a long memory for violence and a short memory for redemption. The families of people you killed during your brotherhood years don't forget, don't forgive, don't care about your current work helping others. They send letters sometimes, not threats, just reminders. Photos of the people you took from them, descriptions of the lives cut short by your choices, simple statements about the ongoing cost of your past decisions. You read every letter. It's the least you can do. The hardest ones come from children, sons and daughters who grew up without parents because of missions you led, siblings who lost brothers and sisters to your fire, kids who learned to fear mutants because mutants like you gave them good reason to be afraid. One letter from a girl named Emma, whose father died in the Sentinel facility you destroyed, ends with a question that haunts you. Do you think about him? Do you remember his name? Do you care that I'll never get to show him my high school diploma or walk down the aisle at my wedding? You write back, because she deserves an answer. You tell her that yes, you remember her father's name, David Martinez, security guard, 2 children, worked nights to pay for his daughter's college fund. You tell her that you think about him often, that you're sorry for her loss, that you know your current work doesn't balance the scales, but you're trying anyway. You don't hear back. Most of them don't respond, and you don't blame them. The X-Men colleagues who work with you maintain professional courtesy, but most of them keep their distance. You're useful for your specialized knowledge and unique perspective, but you're not invited to team dinners or casual conversations or the informal bonds that make a workplace feel like a community. Scott nods when he passes you in the hallway, but never stops to chat. Jean is cordial during meetings, but doesn't linger afterward. Bobby is friendly enough, but there's always a slight tension, a careful distance that wasn't there when you were roommates. Only Logan treats you without visible reservation, probably because he's made similar choices and lived with similar consequences. He understands the particular isolation that comes with being reformed rather than redeemed, useful rather than trusted. The past doesn't go away, he tells you during one of your occasional conversations. Best you can do is make the present count for something. Your living situation reflects your status. A small apartment on the mansion grounds, close enough to be available for crisis counseling, but separate enough to maintain boundaries. You eat most meals alone, spend evenings reading or working on case files, exist in the social spaces between categories. You're not a student, not a teacher, not quite staff, but not quite volunteer. You're something new, something the school's social structure wasn't designed to accommodate, a former enemy trying to be useful, a reformed extremist working for the cause he once opposed. Dating is complicated in ways you never expected. How do you explain your history to someone you're interested in? When do you mention the war crimes? How do you build intimacy with someone while carrying secrets that could destroy any relationship? You try occasionally. Coffee with a librarian who works in town, dinner with a social worker you meet at a conference. Normal people living normal lives who don't know about the mutant conflict beyond what they see on the news. The relationships never last. Either you tell them the truth and they become afraid of you, or you don't, and the deception becomes unbearable. Either way, you end up alone again, reminded that some choices have consequences that extend far beyond their immediate effects. But the work continues, and that's what matters. You help a teenage pyrokinetic learn to control his temper before it burns down his family's house. You counsel a young telepath who's struggling with the invasion of privacy that comes with reading minds. You talk a potential Brotherhood recruit out of joining by describing exactly what that path leads to. Each success is small, personal, invisible to the outside world. No newspapers write about teenagers who don't become terrorists. No monuments celebrate the tragedies that never happen because someone made a better choice. But you know, every kid who chooses therapy over revenge, every young mutant who learns control instead of destruction, every potential extremist who finds better outlets for their anger, you know that your past failures are helping prevent future ones. It's not justice exactly. Justice would require you to face trial for your crimes, serve time for your actions, make formal restitution to your victims' families. Justice would probably end with you in prison or dead, depending on which government got to you first. Instead, you get to work towards something that might eventually resemble balance, not redemption. That's too big a word for what you're doing. But purpose, maybe. Usefulness. The kind of meaning that comes from trying to prevent others from making your mistakes. Some nights, you lie in your small apartment and wonder if it's enough, if all the counseling and mentoring and crisis intervention adds up to something that justifies the space you take up in the world, the resources spent on your rehabilitation, the risk involved in trusting you with vulnerable young people. Other nights you get calls from former clients who want to tell you about their college graduation, their new job, their engagement to someone who loves them despite their dangerous mutation. Kids who could have become killers but chose to become teachers, doctors, social workers instead. Those nights the answer feels clearer. You can't undo the damage you've done. The people you killed stay dead. The families you destroyed stay broken. The fear you created stays real. But you can work to ensure that the cycle doesn't continue, that the next generation of angry young mutants finds better outlets for their rage. You can be living proof that people can change, even when that change comes too late to matter for some purposes. You can carry the weight of your choices without being crushed by it and help others learn to do the same. It's not everything you once hoped to be, but it's something worth being, and some days that's enough. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about being special. Sometimes special just means you suffer in ways other people can't understand. 10 years since your last mission for the Brotherhood, 15 since you graduated from student to soldier, 25 since your powers first manifested and destroyed any chance you had at a normal life. You're older now, more experienced, theoretically wiser. You understand things about power and responsibility and the cost of choices that your younger self couldn't have grasped, and you're still fundamentally alone in ways that normal people will never comprehend. It's not just the isolation that comes from being dangerous, though that's real enough. It's not just the social barriers created by your history, though those matter too. It's something deeper, more essential. The particular loneliness that comes from existing between worlds that both reject you. You're too human for the extremists who want to embrace their mutation as evolutionary superiority. You're too dangerous for the humans who want to pretend people like you don't exist. You're too compromised for the X-Men who still believe in pure heroism. You're too reformed for the criminals who see your counseling work as betrayal of your true nature. You exist in the spaces between categories, useful to everyone and belonging to no one. The young mutants you counsel sometimes ask you what it's like to be normal, as if you remember what that feels like. But the truth is, you were never normal, even before your powers manifested. You were always going to be different, always going to be dangerous, always going to exist on the margins of human society. The mutation didn't make you an outsider, it just made your otherness visible. Some of the kids you work with will integrate successfully into human society. They'll learn to control their powers, hide their abilities when necessary, build relationships with people who either don't know about their mutation or don't care. They'll have careers, families, something resembling the lives their parents dreamed of for them. Others won't. Others will always be too powerful, too visible, too obviously different to blend in anywhere. They'll spend their lives moving between safe houses and hidden communities, never quite belonging anywhere, never quite safe anywhere. The lucky ones find each other, communities of mutants who've given up on integration and built their own societies in remote places, underground networks, parallel worlds that exist alongside human civilization without intersecting with it. They create families of choice, support systems based on shared experience rather than blood or geography. The unlucky ones end up like you, useful to various causes but never quite trusted by any of them, carrying skills and knowledge that make them valuable assets, but never really family. You think about this during the late-night crisis calls, the emergency counseling sessions, the intervention meetings that happen when a young mutant's control starts slipping. You think about the futures you're helping these kids avoid and the futures you can't quite help them achieve, because here's what nobody talks about in all the speeches about mutant rights and human tolerance and Professor Xavier's dream of coexistence. The dream might be impossible, not because humans are too prejudiced, but because mutants are too different. When you can read minds, normal conversation becomes a performance. When you can manipulate matter at the molecular level, the ordinary world feels fragile and temporary. When you heal from injuries that would kill normal people, mortality becomes an abstract concept rather than a shared human experience. The power changes you in ways that go beyond the obvious. It changes how you think, how you relate to others, how you understand concepts like consequence and permanence and vulnerability, and those changes create barriers that no amount of tolerance or acceptance can fully bridge. You see this in the relationships your former students try to build. The telepath who can't turn off her ability to read her boyfriend's thoughts and slowly loses the capacity for trust or surprise. The shapeshifter who's so used to changing her appearance that she's forgotten what her real face looks like. The time manipulator who experiences linear causality differently than everyone around him and can't quite connect with people who are trapped in the forward flow of time. They're good people, your former clients. Kind, thoughtful, committed to using their abilities responsibly, but they're also fundamentally alien in ways that matter more than anyone wants to admit. And you're no different. 25 years of living with power, with the constant awareness that you could kill anyone in your vicinity without breaking a sweat. With the memory of what it feels like to embrace that power completely, it's changed you in ways that therapy and good intentions can't fully address. You can counsel angry young mutants because you understand their rage, but you can't quite connect with baseline humans because you've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable, to be afraid of physical harm, to worry about consequences you can't survive. You exist in the space between human and post-human, belonging fully to neither category. The hardest part isn't the loneliness, though that's significant. The hardest part is the pretending, the constant performance of being more human than you are, more normal than you can be, more redeemed than the evidence suggests. You smile at students' parents during school functions while knowing they'd be terrified if they understood what you're capable of. You maintain professional relationships with colleagues who treat you with courtesy but not warmth. You go through the motions of ordinary social interactions while being constantly aware of the vast gulf between your experiences and theirs. Sometimes you wonder if this is what Logan meant when he talked about the weight of choices. Not just the guilt or regret or responsibility, but the fundamental isolation that comes from becoming something that doesn't quite fit anywhere. Sometimes you wonder if the extremists, both human and mutant, are right about coexistence being impossible. Not because of hatred or fear or political differences, but because the gaps between different types of consciousness might simply be too wide to bridge. But then you get a letter from a former client who's gotten married, started a family, found a way to build genuine connections despite the barriers, or you help a new student work through a crisis that might have led to tragedy. Or you have a conversation with Logan that reminds you that isolation doesn't have to mean meaninglessness. The work continues, the kids keep coming, scared, angry, powerful, desperate for guidance from someone who understands what they're going through. Some of them will find ways to belong, to connect, to build lives that matter despite the fundamental loneliness of being different. Others will end up like you, useful, productive, but never quite home anywhere. And that's not nothing. Being useful matters even when you can't be normal. Having purpose matters even when you can't have belonging. Making a difference matters even when you can't make peace with your own nature. You can't change what you are. You can't undo what you've done. You can't bridge the gap between human and post-human consciousness. But you can help others carry the weight of difference without being crushed by it. You can be proof that monsters can choose to be useful. You can show young mutants that there are alternatives to destruction, even when there's no path back to innocence. It's not the life you would have chosen, but it's the life you've built from the wreckage of better dreams. And on the good days, when a crisis is averted or a connection is made or a kid chooses healing over revenge, it almost feels like enough. Not everything, but enough. And for someone like you, enough is more than you had any right to expect. So that's what it's like being born a mutant. Still think it sounds fun? Still want those powers? Because let me tell you what happens next, kid. You're going to close this video and go back to your normal life, and you're going to forget most of what I've told you. You're going to see the next superhero movie and think about how cool it would be to have abilities, how much better your life would be if you were special instead of ordinary. You're going to wish you were different because being human feels boring and limited and small. And maybe you're right. Maybe your life is boring. Maybe you do feel powerless in a world that seems designed to remind you how little control you have over your circumstances. Maybe you dream about being the kind of person who can solve problems with force instead of patience, who can change the world instead of adapting to it. But here's what I want you to understand. Being powerful doesn't make you free. It just gives you different problems, bigger consequences, heavier responsibilities. It doesn't solve the fundamental challenge of being alive. It just changes the stakes. Every kid I've counseled, every mutant I've worked with, every person born with abilities that set them apart from baseline humanity, they all face the same basic questions that normal people face. Who am I? What do I want? How do I connect with others? What's my purpose? How do I deal with pain, loss, fear, loneliness? The powers don't answer those questions. They just make the answers more complicated. You want to know the real difference between mutants and humans? It's not the abilities. It's not the genetic markers or the evolutionary potential or any of the grand theories about the next step in human development. It's the isolation. It's existing in a category of one, being the only person in your family, your school, your community who experiences reality the way you do. It's the weight of knowing that your choices have consequences that normal people don't have to consider. It's being responsible for power you never asked for in a world that fears what it doesn't understand. I've lived through 2 centuries of human conflict. I've seen empires rise and fall, witnessed technological progress that would seem like magic to earlier generations, watched social movements transform the world in ways that seemed impossible to the people who lived before them. And through all of it, the fundamental challenge hasn't changed. People, human, mutant, or whatever comes next, are still trying to figure out how to live with themselves and each other, still struggling with the gap between what they want to be and what they are, still looking for meaning, connection, purpose in a universe that doesn't provide easy answers. The powers don't fix that. They just make it more complicated. Charles Xavier spent his life believing that humans and mutants could learn to coexist peacefully, that fear and prejudice could be overcome through education and example, that the dream of a better world was worth fighting for even when the evidence suggested it was impossible. He was probably wrong about the coexistence part. The gaps between different types of consciousness might simply be too wide to bridge, the fears too deep to overcome, the conflicts too fundamental to resolve. But he was right about one thing. The dream matters, even when it's impossible. Especially when it's impossible. Because the alternative to dreaming about a better world is accepting that this is as good as it gets. And I've seen too much good in people, human and mutant both, to believe that's true. The kids I counsel don't become terrorists not because I've convinced them that coexistence is possible, but because I've shown them that becoming a monster doesn't solve anything, that revenge doesn't heal trauma, that power without purpose is just destruction waiting to happen. Some of them will find ways to bridge the gaps, to build connections across the divide between different types of humanity. Others will find meaning in service, in protection, in the countless small acts that make the world slightly less terrible. And some will fail, will become the nightmares that justify fear, will prove that integration is impossible and coexistence is a fantasy. All of that is true simultaneously. The world is complex enough to contain contradictions, messy enough to resist simple solutions, broken enough to require constant effort just to maintain basic decency. That's not a reason to give up. That's just the context in which hope has to operate. I'm not going to tell you that everything works out in the end, because it doesn't. I'm not going to promise that being different is secretly a blessing, because it's mostly a burden. I'm not going to pretend that the world is fair or just or designed to reward good intentions. But I will tell you this: what you do with the circumstances you're given matters, even when it doesn't fix everything. How you treat people matters, even when they can't or won't reciprocate. The choices you make about who to be matter, even when nobody's keeping score. And if you ever find yourself with more power than you know what to do with, remember that the point isn't to use it perfectly. The point is to use it responsibly, to carry the weight without being crushed by it, to be useful rather than destructive, to be better than you have to be, because someone has to be. But here's the thing: even knowing everything I know, even after all the pain and loss and loneliness, I'd still rather be who I am than what I was pretending to be, because authenticity matters, even when it's painful, because being real is better than being safe, because the alternative to accepting what you are is spending your life pretending to be something else, and that's not really living at all. I've made mistakes that can't be undone, hurt people who didn't deserve it, become things I never intended to become. I've been a weapon, a monster, a cautionary tale about what happens when power isn't balanced by wisdom. But I've also been useful. I've prevented tragedies, helped people heal, shown others that change is possible even when redemption isn't guaranteed. I've found meaning in the wreckage of better dreams, purpose in the aftermath of failure. That's not nothing. On the good days, it's almost everything. The young mutants I work with sometimes ask me if I regret my mutation, if I wish I'd been born normal, if I think my life would have been better without powers. It's a reasonable question. My abilities have brought me pain, isolation, and more responsibility than any person should have to carry. But the answer is no. Not because the powers themselves are worth the cost, but because becoming who I am required going through what I've been through. The person I am now, flawed, damaged, but trying to be useful, couldn't exist without the experiences that created him. And I like who I am now, mostly. I like being someone who understands the weight of choices, who can help others avoid the mistakes I've made, who knows that redemption is possible even when it's not guaranteed. I like being real instead of pretending to be normal. The kids I counsel don't need to become heroes. They don't need to save the world or prove anything to anyone or live up to impossible standards of moral perfection. They just need to find ways to be themselves without destroying everything around them. Some of them will become teachers, doctors, artists, engineers, people who happen to have abilities but choose to use them in service of ordinary human needs. Others will become protectors, advocates, bridge builders between communities that don't understand each other. A few will probably become X-Men, carrying on Charles's work despite its contradictions and limitations. Others will join organizations that don't exist yet, movements that haven't been imagined, causes that will emerge from circumstances we can't predict. And some will simply live quiet lives, raising families, building relationships, finding meaning in the countless small interactions that make up a human existence. They'll use their powers carefully, privately, in service of people they love, rather than grand causes or abstract ideals. All of those choices are valid. All of those lives matter. The point isn't to be special. The point is to be useful, to be real, to be present in whatever circumstances you find yourself in, to carry the weight of what you are without being crushed by it, to find meaning in the work of being human, even when being human is more complicated than anyone expected, to help where you can, harm as little as possible, and leave the world slightly better than you found it. That's not a small thing. That's not a consolation prize. That's the whole game for mutants and humans alike. And if you can do that, if you can be authentic and useful and present, then it doesn't matter whether you're normal or special, powered or baseline, accepted or rejected by the world around you. You're doing the work that needs to be done. You're being the person you're supposed to be, and that's enough, more than enough. That's everything. So here's my advice, kid. Whether you're human or mutant or something in between, figure out who you are, accept what you can't change, work to improve what you can, and be useful to the people around you. Find others who understand what you're going through. Build communities based on shared experience rather than shared genetics. Look for meaning in service rather than power. And remember that being different isn't a curse or a blessing, it's just a circumstance. What matters is what you do with it. What matters is who you choose to be. Everything else is just details. Welcome to the world, kid. It's complicated, dangerous, often unfair, and absolutely worth fighting for. Try not to burn it down on your way through. Someone has to keep the lights on. Might as well be you.